So welcome everybody, and thank you, big thank you to Kerry and Tim for organising this. I think it's a great way for us to better understand ADSN, but especially the members and what your activities are, what you're doing, and where we might be able to work together with you. So Tim sent through a few questions ahead of this this event, and we'll get to those at the end. I'd be very interested in hearing what your research infrastructure needs are and where we might be able to work together on those. So yes, my name's Keith Russell, and I'm Manager Engagements and Expertise at the Australian Research Data Commons. And I need to, there we are, that's it, excellent. And first of all, I would also like to acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians on the traditional lands of which we meet. For me, that's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation here in Melbourne. And I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So today I'm going to provide a brief overview of ARDC, give you a bit of an idea what sort of services we provide for researchers, not only the technical services, but also the communities and support, the more softer services we provide, give you a bit of a view what our future plans are, where we're going, and then I'd like to spend most of our time in that discussion around research infrastructure. What are your needs? What do we provide? How does it all fit together? And how could we work together into the future? So first of all, ARDC. Kerry did a lovely, I think it was a one-liner almost on what ARDC is, and I thought it's great. I could hardly cop that one. I'll provide a little bit more around that. So first of all, we are an NCRIS facility. We're funded under the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy. So our focus is providing research infrastructure. Now, there's a range of research infrastructure facilities that are funded under NCRIS. Most of these are domain specific. Providing facilities and capabilities for researchers in specific domains. For ARDC, it's not specifically in one domain, but it's very much around data. And how can we best support researchers to conduct data-intensive science? So we are a membership organization. We currently have 21 members, I think, off the top of my head. And if your institution's not mentioned in this list, please encourage them to sign up because we're always looking for more members. So one of the questions that we frequently get asked is, okay, you're called the Australian Research Data Commons, but what does that actually mean? What do you understand a research data commons to be? So we see it as a place, a virtual place that brings together the people, the skills, the data and related resources such as storage, compute and software so that the Australian researchers can conduct world-class data-intensive research. So it's bringing all those elements together and connecting them all up. And there's a few principles and underlying approaches we take when considering these. So a number of those, for example, open science is one of those we're looking at. The FAIR principles is very important to us. So making data findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable, because that actually enables better reuse by other researchers. But we're also looking at other approaches and principles like, for example, the CARE principles in Indigenous data governance. So I won't read out this whole slide. The whole slide deck will be available after this presentation, so you can read it in detail. The two things I do want to highlight is our purpose. Our purpose is to provide Australian researchers with competitive advantage through data. And our mission there is to accelerate research and innovation by driving excellence in the creation, analysis and retention of high quality data assets. So I hope that gives a bit of a sense of what we are and what we're aiming to do. So what does that mean in practice? What could you get out of ARDC? What are the services that we provide that are available for you and your researchers? So one of them, it's quite widely used and widely adopted, is the National Nectar Research Cloud. So this is a national cloud that's freely available to eligible Australian researchers and institutions. It's been around for 10 years now, and there's a wide range of projects and activities making use of this research cloud. So if you're not already using it or your students are not already using it, have a look at it because it might well be of interest. When we develop infrastructure. And when we develop these services, we don't do this in isolation, but we think about the other pieces of the puzzle that are out there and the other organizations, and make sure that it's tied together and it can be integrated and connected up with other pieces of the puzzle. So a nice example in that space is CloudStor, which is developed by ARNet and delivered by ARNet. And there we've worked together with ARNet to ensure that the storage on CloudStor can be mounted onto Nectar Research Cloud so that researchers can actually conduct analysis over data that's sitting on CloudStor. And vice versa, a researcher using CloudStor can also run a small to medium scale analysis using Jupyter Notebooks through the Swan service on CloudStor. So that was on Nectar Research Cloud. Another service we provide is Research Data Australia. So this is a service that makes Australian research data findable. So currently there's over 200,000 research data sets available through Research Data Australia. It's worth having a look, and you might well find research data sets that are useful for your research or to build upon. So that was the findable side of things. If you look at the interoperable side of things, we're supporting researchers to make their data more interoperable. And an element in that space is having vocabularies over the data sets. And there we have a service that enables you to find, access, reuse, but also deposit your vocabularies so that when you build your data sets, you're using community agreed and recognized vocabularies, and you can link off to those. We're also developing with the sector a globally unique persistent identifiers to tie together information about the data sets that are available. This provides a much richer context of information around the data that is out there, so that researchers have a view about not only what is the data, but who created it, which elements, which instruments are involved, which samples were involved in actually building this data set, and which institutions were involved in creating the data set. In the data storage space, we've been working together with partners to try and find out what would be the appropriate information to collect alongside data sets so that you can increase the impact of the investment in the data storage. So what we're looking at there is, how can you capture information alongside data sets to make the data more findable and accessible, but also how can that information be captured in such a way that it can inform decisions about retaining that data or disposal of data down the track. So that's very helpful in thinking about the management of these huge data assets, these huge data collections which are being created around the country. One of the other activities we've been doing is co-investing with a series of partners to create research platforms. So these are domain-oriented virtual platforms where researchers can come and bring their data and run the appropriate analysis tools and workflows over that data and do collaborative research. So there's a range of different research platforms out there now, and there's more coming. So have a look at these. There might well be a research platform that is of use for you or for your students, and also there will be more coming, so watch this space. As I mentioned earlier, we don't just focus on the hard infrastructure, but we also try to look at the soft infrastructure, the people side of things to make this all happen. So there we provide support to the sector and to researchers, and also try to bring the sector together in communities, so to build and tackle the big challenges that are in the data space. So let's see this. There we are. That's nicer. We have all of them in one go. So one of the things we're building is a hub of expertise together with the sector to help you tackle your data challenges. So there's a number of key challenges we're coming up all around the country, you're hearing regularly. So for example, questions around data governance, how to properly manage sensitive data and make that more shareable. Developing a systems architecture or a data architecture when building your total architecture. Questions around research software, AI, machine learning, all the aspects of the fair data principles, and the skills for researchers to do the analysis. So there's a whole range of different questions that are coming our way, and if you have any questions in this space, please feel free to reach out connect up with us, and we'd be happy to provide support or bring you bring you in contact with other people in the community that are working on similar challenges. So we facilitate a whole range of communities of practice. I've mentioned just a few here, there's a lot more, but a few that might be of interest especially is a machine learning community of practice for Australia, a data quality interest group, there's a sensitive data community, a community around identifiers for instruments, etc. So these are platforms where partners can exchange information, but also work on problem solving, peer support, and development of best practice. So I spend a lot of time talking about data, and data is, of course, in the ARDC title. But another area we also are working on is a national agenda around research software. So we don't only think that data is an important part of the puzzle, but research software is also quite very important and needs to be recognized as a first-class output of research alongside publications and research data. So we're working in that space, and this is a space that is still much more emerging, and working with through concerted, coordinated action with all the Australian research community to try and see what we can do in activities to increase the awareness of the importance of research software and to ensure it's better managed and shared. Another area where we're working is on research skills, digital research skills. So those skills that researchers need to do that analysis and be able to work on the data. And we've identified a sort of an agenda in that space, working with a whole range of different partners. And the basis for that, a very important part of that, is that a digital research capabilities and skills framework, which we're happy to share. And we'll give you a bit of a sense what we see as pieces of the puzzle that need to be addressed. Two pieces of work we've already done in the skills space. We've worked with 10 universities to establish a partnership so that these universities actually can start deliver a program of coding training for their researchers through the Carpentries model. So that's up and running, and we're working with that to get that further socialized and get more researchers trained through that model. The other piece of work we've been doing with a range of training providers around the country is building a Digital Research Skills Australasia. So it's a portal, and in the portal you can find training events, training materials, training providers, and gives your researcher a chance to see what is out there and what might they be able to make use of. If you are a training provider yourself and you'd like to contribute to this, please get in touch. We'd love to have your training sessions and your training materials in DRISA available to researchers. So those were a few things that are already available and services we run. There's also a few things that are going to be coming up quite soon, so I thought I'd highlight them so give you a bit of an idea of what's coming up. So one of these is a large program that we established through Open Call, a large co-investment program, more than 20 million in total investment. And what we've been aiming to do here is build national significant, national scale significant data assets that support leading edge research. So these projects are now coming to completion. So we'll be advertising these as they become available so that you can see what data assets are out there that might be of use in your data analysis and you might be able to build upon. One specific example I want to highlight is the HASANDA, Health Studies Australia National Data Asset. So what we've been doing here is bringing together data that's coming out of clinical trials and making sure this data is stored on various nodes around the country and making sure that the existence of that data is findable and recognizable so that people can find the fact that there is data out there, and having frameworks over that so that researchers can request access to this data using the appropriate mechanisms. So it's a really interesting project, very sensitive data, of course. So looking at how we can best build this, this total landscape. So those were a few things that are in the pipeline about to deliver. Future developments, I thought it would be worth spending a little time talking about where ARDC is going and what our direction is into the future. So first of all, as we did these large open calls, we realized there was huge demand across the whole sector for research infrastructure for Australian researchers. And trying to meet that demand's quite hard because there's such a large, wide demand out there. So we said, well, let's try and focus it more strategically in selecting thematic areas. So we identified 3 key areas that we wanted to work in, and 3 quite broad areas initially. So that's the people space, planet, and HAS and Indigenous. So those are the 3 themes we wanted to address and work on. And for those themes, we're looking at addressing obviously Australia's science and research priorities and bringing together the infrastructure that's needed to address those priorities. So not just the data, but the data and the associated services and the platforms and software that's needed to analyze the data based on a storage and compute to make it all happen, with the soft skills and the frameworks and the policies to bring it all together. So it's much more an integrated approach around a specific theme and area. So the first of these I mentioned, the People Research Data Commons. What we've done here is we've looked at what does that broad area of people mean and what would be a priority in that space. And we've been started off with health and biomedical researchers to look at what were their key challenges, their key data challenges that they currently are facing, and run a series of consultations. That consultation report has just been released, and based upon their priorities and their challenges, we're now looking to see what we could build to build a research data commons for the health and medical space and enable health research and research translation. We're now going into the next phase, which is consulting with research infrastructure partners on, if we have these data challenges and these data questions, what infrastructure do we need to make it happen, and how can we tie elements that already exist together to make it all work? The next one in that list of thematic research data commons was Planet, and there we've broadened that broad concept of Planet down to look at especially environmental research and decision making. We've now just kicked off we're just about to kick off the first consultations with environmental researchers to say, well, what are your key data challenges to answer the questions in environmental research and decision making. So that's just about to start off, and that's going to be another area of key focus for us for the coming period. The third one in this space is humanities, arts, and social sciences. So this goes back a little bit further in that there's been ARDC has been working with researchers in the humanities, arts, social sciences, and also in Indigenous research to try and figure out what are the infrastructure needs, what do you need, what are the key challenges in this space. And that resulted in a report which we provided to the department, and the Department of Education then said, well, we think there's probably 4 projects that would be valuable in this space, and we've now kicked off these projects, and these are now up and running. And what we're looking at is not only running these projects, but also seeing what are the services across those projects that are shared and would be of value to all of these projects. So this is it's a really interesting area where a lot of cutting edge work is happening. Finally, there's a program that I also want to mention, which is now up and running, and it's called the Translational Research Data Challenges. So what we are looking at here is, what are the data challenges out there that would enable actual translation into benefits for business and industry, also in benefits to government and decision making. And we picked off a number of key priority areas and challenges for Australia. The first one was bushfires. So what we're looking at here is what sort of bushfire data and models can be brought together to enable decision making and to enable the tackling of the bushfire challenges that we face. So we've established a number of projects in that space. First of all, bringing together data around bushfire behavior. What does that look like in bushfire models? And we're now kicking off a series of projects around bushfire impact. What is the impact of bushfires on health and on infrastructure and on the urban environment, etc. The second one second area within the program of translational research data challenges is in the space of food security. We've just kicked this off. The consultations with agricultural researchers are now just starting off, and what we're trying to do here is we're trying to figure out what are the areas where we can bring together agricultural data and analysis to ensure that that you can actually meet the food challenges and provide best quality research and data to enable Australian researchers to not only conduct that data, but that information to be carried forward and be used in business and industry for ag producers, for breeders associations, etc. So looking at that food chain. So that was as I mentioned before, quite a few slides about all the things that ARDC does, quite a wide spread of activities. Now, I hope that that was at least a bit of a useful introduction, gave you a bit of a sense of what ARDC is doing. What we were hoping to do is also spend a bit of time having a discussion with you about, well, what do you see as key challenges for you conducting data science? What are your key research infrastructure needs? So to make this a bit easier, we thought we'd run this through Mentimeter. So if you're happy to do that, would be great. So there's two ways of doing it. Either you can take your phone pointed at this QR tag. That's one way of doing it. Or you can go to mentimeter.com and enter the code 93775979. Both things will take you to the same place, and there'll be a poll asking you some questions. What do you see as your key research infrastructure needs? So while everybody's having a chance to do this, are there any questions on just more generally on the presentation and what ARDC does?
Thanks very much for that, Keith. I'm going to start, just when you come into Mentimeter, it says challenges in data science. Would you like to just expand a little on what you would like people to write in that?
Sorry, it's actually your research infrastructure challenges. So what are your research infrastructure needs to conduct your data, conduct your data science?
And what types of research infrastructure needs are you sort of looking for? Give some examples of what people might put in there.
Yes, so it might be needs in specific types of compute, specific types of cores, specific coordination across compute solutions, using different cloud solutions, tying up storage onto compute. It could be skills in this space. It could be researcher skills that are lacking. It could be a lack of available data sets to make it all happen, or lack of understanding how to tie together existing data sets. Lack of interoperability. These are all possible areas that that we are hearing from partners at different points in time. I hope that's useful as a bit of an idea what sort of things we're thinking about.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks.